Okay, so welcome everybody to this podcast edition for the Bin Chickens Vinyl Fair. Joining me today is Matt from the website thehardtimes.net. How are you doing, Matt?
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for having me. I'm doing good.
Now, what do you know about the vinyl? Has Julie talked to you about the Vinyl Fair in any detail? Are you? Because I'm not sure exactly.
Let me
I
guess.
guess we'll just start at the beginning.
Is it
Go
a
ahead.
fair with vinyl there? Is it records?
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Vinyl Records at Rock Bottom Brewery, June 15th. We're gonna have some DJs spinning
That's
while
awesome,
people are
man.
doing the crates. Yeah, so it's gonna be a good time. Um,
In the Bay
so
Area, we have a Bay Area record fest. It's called BARF.
oh,
So
nice.
it's kind of like I'm guessing you're gonna have some people set up some tables and have like record stores there and some records and some used collection and a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's gonna be. So
Badass. Sounds like a lot of fun, man.
yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. Um, so Julie hasn't told me much about um the website here. Do you run the website hardtimes.net or?
I do. Yes. Um, our website is like the Onion, but for punk kids. And I started it with a couple punk friends of mine in 2014. And it has since grown to be very, very popular amongst people like you and I. So, yeah.
Excellent. Um, so I was trying to kind of go around the website a little bit earlier. So you are a punk fan then, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. I played in a couple different punk bands. I played in hardcore bands. I've toured the country a couple times, did the whole DIY uh, tour thing where you sleep on floors. I put out a couple records,
Oh,
couple 7 inches. We did it ourselves. No one wanted to put out our band, so we just figured out how to do it ourselves. And I put out a couple tapes. I had a little small. My brother and I ran like a tiny little label for our friends' bands. Just a whole bunch of friend stuff. Um, but yeah, I'm intimately involved with that scene for sure.
okay. And when did you have you? I'm assuming you've been into punk since you were a young lad, or what?
Yeah, definitely. I was first introduced to punk in elementary school. My dad and my brother were showing me like the Ramones, and they had a big impact on me. And I think my first punk show I ever went to was like probably Youth Brigade in San Francisco, and I probably was in late middle school, if I had to guess. I don't
Oh,
remember 100%. I went to go see Catch 22 in middle school, I believe. Wait, I went to see Catch 22 in elementary school. Yeah.
oh, wow.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I got exposed to it. I had an older brother who got into it and figured it all out and which bands he liked, and he showed me all that stuff. Like he would hand me an iPod with a whole bunch of music on it. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I'm a little weird because I've been into punk my entire life, so it's very kind of strange.
Okay, so I know pretty much next to nothing about punk.
Hmm.
Julie's a punk fan, but so when you say it's a little strange that you've been into punk your whole life, is there a certain so that's atypical among punk fans in general, or they get into it later, or they give it up at some point?
Um, that's an interesting question. I'm not 100% sure. I feel like punk is definitely something you usually get into in your teenage years, so maybe a lot of people kind of stick with it throughout their whole life. I just always felt like it was a little strange that I had started getting into a particular type of music in elementary school, and now I'm an
Yeah.
adult and I run a website dedicated to it. So it does feel like a little bit like of a Arrested Development or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe it's a little bit more common than I make it out to be. I'm not 100% sure. There's definitely at punk shows. There's usually little punk kids running around,
Mhm.
really young. So maybe I was just one of those kids. We have a podcast. It's called the Hard Times Podcast, and we were interviewing Harley Flanagan from the Cro-Mags, and he was like a 10-year-old punk kid running around in the scene. He played drums in a band called the Stimulators in New York when he was like 14 or something.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I think that it is kind of like a little bit of a maybe it's not as strange as I make it out to be in the punk scene.
Well, I think it makes sense if you really get into anything, whether it's a particular musical genre or any sort of hobby, if you get into it when you're young, and you're kind of naive and innocent as far as the evils of the world,
Hmm.
um, it's easy to fall in love with something, and then I think it's more likely that it stays with you throughout your life because it's as you get older, it's at the very least it's nostalgic and it takes you back to that childhood innocence, which is obviously always good.
Yeah, and another thing is that our website's all about satirizing the punk scene and pointing out the absurdities, and so you have to kind of have been around for a little while to notice those things instead of just like kind of blindly love it. You have to start to love it, but then also love its flaws and know its flaws and be able to poke fun
Okay.
at them accurately. So I think with my co-founder and I and a lot of our writers have just been around the scene long enough that we're making some observations that other websites don't make, which is probably part of the reason why we're popular. Um, yeah.
Now, so what was the discussion like when you guys were talking about this? You said you started it in 2014.
Yeah. Well, I was a journalist and a freelance writer, and I got assigned to a story. My editor came to me. I was working at SF Weekly. I was a freelancer at SF Weekly, and my editor said something like, "Hey, this guy emailed us, and he says he had sex with a dolphin and wrote a book about it. That would be that would be really weird for you to go and interview that guy." And so I thought, yeah, they wanted me to call him, but I thought it'd be funnier if I went and I interviewed him face to face. So I met up with this dude. I interviewed him, and he's just super bizarre. He thinks he has a psychic connection with this dolphin, and he had sex with it. He writes this book about it. It's like a fictionalized version of his sexual escapades with this dolphin. It's called Wet Goddess. I've got a signed copy of it on my desk.
Oh wow.
But he's a really a weird dude, and so the interview goes viral, right? And he goes all around the world like multiple times, just and the share counter is going up, 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 up. I get all this positive reinforcement. My editor, the publisher, everyone's saying it's like the most viewed article on the site in a long time. But I only got paid $35 to do it. And I remember thinking, well, I went and I met the guy. I paid for parking. I paid for gas. I came up with the questions. I took the photo of him, and people are really responding to my sense of humor, and that's the viralness of this is like the way that I wrote it out to be funny, and the natural absurdity of it. And I started to think, if it's going to be me who creates this absurd content that goes viral and makes people laugh, um, why can't I just be the guy who owns the website? How hard could it possibly be to own your own website? And then I would keep all the money for myself, right? Instead of just getting paid $35. When it goes viral, I would get all the money. Um, and so that was my general notion of why I wanted to own a website. I had this idea of a Vice version of the Onion was pretty much what I was imagining, not quite a punk version. I was also writing for Vice at the time, and I just noticed that there's like the New York Times, and then there's like Vice, and I noticed there was the Onion, but there was no kind of Vice equivalent. There's no alternative for younger music-oriented people who are dealing with different problems than the average character in an Onion story is, right? The Onion's got a main character who's like a middle-aged white dad with a kid and a lawn and a 9 to 5 job, and then you have the hard times, and our main character has like a band, a shitty roommate, and depression, right? So it's just like a way
Yeah.
different vibe. And so, kind of all those things coalesce together. My notion of I had this idea for a site, my notion of I wanted to start owning a site, I didn't want to be just a freelancer anymore, and then all that sort of compiled together, mixed with I didn't have, I couldn't get enough work as a writer, and so I actually thought for a while maybe I shouldn't be a writer, maybe because everyone kept telling me how good my writing was, like my editors and people who were
Right.
reading it. Like, man, you're so good at this. Like, you're real talented. I was young, so I think they're like encouraging me. But then at the same time, I was like, I couldn't pay my bills. And I remember thinking, like, what is the point of having a skill if I can't support myself? I'm not trying to be rich, but like, I can't support myself on this. Um, so I thought about giving it up for a little bit. And then I said, you know what? I've had this idea for quite some time for this website, The Hard Times. Like, maybe I should at least try that before I give up on writing as a whole.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
and then it took off. So here we are.
That's excellent. That's a good story.
Thanks.
Definitely glad you didn't give it up. I can definitely understand the not the temptation to give it up, but just the like you said, you're just sitting there like, what good is it if I can't even pay the bills? I mean,
Writers
you
face
really
a
stuck to,
lot of they face a
yeah.
lot of difficulties, man. It's a rough path. I went to journalism school, and I remember they told us during I don't know what it's called, orientation. They told us during orientation. They said, look to your left and look to your right. most likely both those people won't be here by the time you graduate because people will have given up on this. And then like as we were graduating, they were saying most of you won't be journalists, you know, like some of you might be able to get jobs in PR, but it's it just the whole writing world has always been, to me at least, a very there's so few jobs and the industry's declining so much. It's just like really, really competitive. And it's kind of scary, honestly. You look around and you see these people who you know are more talented than you and they can't find work. And you're like, fuck, what, you know?
It
uh,
can be pretty daunting.
yeah, for sure.
Um, so did you, I'm looking at the site here and you've got a number of like categories like music, blog, video games, news, politics, culture. Did you, I'm assuming some of these came in or were phased in over time, or did you have all this stuff from the jump here?
No, so yeah, we started. So pretty much the way to really think about hard times was we started with a bunch of jokes that only people who hang out in DIY basement shows will understand, right? And
Mm,
then we branched out to let's just keep that perspective and that crew of people, but let's write about culture at large. And so then we started expanding out, and there was a election cycle that came up, and we started covering that. We started covering culture in general, what it was like to work at your job, all these different. We started to realize our readers were, they were punk fans and music fans, but they also were a lot of other things, and they could
sure,
relate to a lot of other things. And there was a huge hole in the marketplace just for those um, people with the subculture, people with alternative interests, people who don't quite relate. Like the Onion is really great. I love the Onion, but it's like they're like if we're just gonna get super corny with it, they're like the Gap, right? And we're like Hot
sure.
Topic, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's definitely corny, but I think it's also apropos. So,
Yeah, yeah. Like hopefully we're a little bit cooler than Hot Topic, but yeah, that's the general gist of what I was trying to say. But yeah,
sure,
so
sure.
we had kept expanding out and tried a whole bunch of different things. And my whole life I've been into punk. The other thing that's been a kind of constant in my whole life has been video games. And so my next idea that I really always wanted to pull off was video games. And eventually I found the right people to help me craft that, and they were contributors at our site. We try very hard to always like hire and give responsibilities from people within our company as opposed to like finding random people outside of it. So if you start writing hard times articles, then maybe you move up in our company. So there's a bunch of people who wrote hard times articles. The editor in chief there, his name's Jeremy Kapowitz. He's a very funny individual. He's got a great team around him, and they started Hard Drive, which was the idea that I had had for a video game vertical, and that took off like crazy too. So that one is actually now just as popular as Hard Times proper, and the company keeps growing, growing, growing. We got a book coming out later this year. We just launched a podcast network. We're working on a web series. We're doing a whole bunch of fun stuff.
Wow, yeah. It sounds like a lot of things are coming down the pipeline real quick here.
Yeah, you got to keep moving. Someone asked me something. They said, like if I liked my job, and I started thinking about it. I was like, I don't really have a job as much as I have just like a hustle. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like you
Yeah,
always have to be cranking something out. Like there is no. I feel like there's this weird. I don't know if you've come across this. There's kind of like this weird notion out there that people are always trying to find and attain like a passive income or something, like a passive income stream. Um, like just they want everything stable and steady, and
yeah.
I've never really found that in my life. I don't think it exists that much. You always have to be moving forward and pushing to get things done, but I like doing that stuff. So I'm happy in that world. But I tell people often what I'm up to, and they say it's kind of a lot of stuff. Why don't you just stick to whatever is working? um, but I don't think that works. I think you always have to be moving forward and doing new things. So I was really happy. My co-founder, his name is Bill Conway, and he led a team of people to create our first book. It's coming out on HMH, which is a publisher. I think it's technically on the imprint Mariner Books, which was technically where like a lot of the Lord of the Rings stuff was originally published or something, or Tolkien. I don't know. Um, and yeah, that's going to come out holiday time 2019. And I'm really excited to get it in people's hands.
Now, what kind of a book is it? Is it like a collection of different articles or?
You know all those music retrospective books? Like in my world, they're like American Hardcore or like the Schism fanzine retrospective, where it's like all like the old zines and like history like scanned into a book. Do you have any of
Sure.
those?
Yeah, I've got some techno retrospectives.
Yeah. So probably like some like stuff from Detroit, like that sort of techno, or is that
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so this is like one of those retrospectives, but it's like a satire of that from the punk scene. So it's a we our premise is that the hard time started in 1976 and has been reporting on punk ever since. So these are like our back catalog of articles through the 70s, 80s, 90s, following all the different punk scene and hardcore scene
Oh, cool.
trends. And then the back half of the book is like our greatest hits from when we started the website. So it's half new content, but the new content is pretend old content from the 70s, and then half our greatest hits.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good actually. I like that idea.
Thanks. We stole it from The Onion. The Onion put out a book called Our Dumb Century, which is kind of similar. Not really, but kind of similar. Which is just like it's like as if they were an old magazine and they go through like, 1910 events. I think ours is so we both have like the time travel element, but ours is much different because it's a satirization of a particular tone of book, which is like those music retrospectives where like everything's super important. Like you don't might not know it, but these guys actually invented this sound and they're idols, and that sort of like tone. Um, so
Right.
that's like our tone for our own company throughout this book. That we're like we invented punk pretty much. It's really fun. I'm excited to actually flip through it. I like making physical products too. Those are really fun. It makes you feel like
Yeah.
you did something, you know?
Sure, sure. Um, so so when you say that you guys are kind of coming at it from the like, we invented punk, is that still from the satirical angle? Like you're kind of poking fun at the older fuddy-duddies who kind of have that,
Yeah,
attitude
exactly.
about everything that comes out new?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like we're the most legit, we're like thank God for us, sort of like we're like these legends, and we kind of throughout the whole book we like say that we inspired all the actual people who actually were legends who inspired things. uh, and yeah, it also gets into like we created characters for all the founders and editors, and like they have like memories throughout the book, and there's like they have storylines, so there's like actually like a narrative arc throughout the book weaved into it. It's
Okay.
not just articles. I'm really proud of what we've done. There's some pieces of it, to be honest, where I read over it the second time and I was like not sure because I've never done it before, and I actually my co-founder Bill, he always tells me I always think negatively as soon as something's done. Like
Yeah.
we went on the Adam Carolla podcast recently, and I was really excited about it. But like when we left, I was like, oh man, I don't know how that went. And Bill's like, dude, Matt, you say that literally no matter what we do. Like we could
Right,
be
right.
anything, and you just tell us after it's done. Like I guess I have some sort of insecurity or something. I'm not sure.
Sure, sure. And a bit of a perfectionist, which I think that's where a lot of truly great things come out of that mindset. So it's not all bad.
Yeah, maybe it's that. I always just want things to be good. It's
Yeah.
weird though, because it's like I want things to be good, but there's certain things I'm not I don't know anything about or I'm not good at. People expect me to be able to do certain things that I'm still learning about, right? So it's like when I sat on that podcast with Adam Carolla, I was immediately like, this guy's a fucking pro level. Like he's so quick on his feet and so fucking funny, and I'm just I can write a joke down if I'm like peace and quiet and I'll spend 30 minutes crafting one sentence or whatever. Uh,
Sure.
but so yeah, so every once in a while I get thrown in the deep end with some people who I think are. But I think that it's kind of like when we were putting out records. Like I think the first record we put out was pretty cool, and then each record that came out after that, we learned more and more about the process. And so I'm really excited for this book to come out. And we had a great editor. Her name was Kate. She worked at the publishing house, and she helped us really bring it to life. But I'm sure I will probably enjoy our second book even more.
And so there's plans for a second book, obviously. Do you have a timeline on that? Or you said this one's coming out holidays?
This was coming out holidays 2019. The thing if the thing about me is I always got plans for things. So yeah, I've got plans for more books. I mean, it doesn't 100% mean those books are coming out, but
Sure, sure.
I've always got something that I'm. You know what I do? I have a kind of a weird personality, so I'll lay in bed at night and I'll think about things that I want to exist that don't exist, and then I'll Google them and then I'll find out they exist and I go, oh fuck. But if they don't exist, then they kind of like stick in my head, and I'll let them. sit there and marinate, and I'll be on a long drive, and I'll like kind of like go through my ideas, and I'll be like, why is this one interesting? You know, is there anything to that? Would people actually like this thing? And if I usually find a reason to dislike my own ideas, but if I can't find a reason to dislike my own ideas after 3 6 months, then I just start getting like this crazy urge of like I have to build this thing. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, I always have ideas for other stuff.
Um, I wanted to touch on because you said the other constant in your life besides punk has been video games.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm not sure how old you are, so I'm not sure like what era, because we all kind of grew up, and well, those who played video games, you had a system that when you were younger, like your first system you played on, and then as you grew, obviously, and systems came out, and everybody has their own favorite system. I'm from an era where the first system I played on was an Atari, so I go way
Cool.
I go back to like the mid '80s. That was probably when I
Hmm.
first started playing video games, and then Nintendo obviously was huge, and then Super Nintendo, N64, and
Hmm.
then I kind of fell off the video game scene for a while as you like get into your 20s, and um, you get fed this lie that video games are stupid and there are more important things. So I got away from them for a while, and then like once Xbox 360 came out, I started getting back into it. Still don't play them as anywhere nearly as often as I want to.
Hmm.
Uh, but so I'm wondering, kind of like what did you grow up on, or what is your favorite system or game, or just anything about video games?
Yeah, I mean, my mom tells me this story of me as a baby where I have a bottle in my mouth. I think there's a picture of it, and I'm playing uh, S- Super Nintendo, and it's just like a Mario. I'm a little baby. I'm in a diaper, and it's like Super Nintendo, and I'm just running into the first pit over and over again. Like I can't even speak yet, but I'm just like I just love playing this game and just watching Mario go into the pit over and over and over again. Um, and so it's just been something I've always been into, like pretty heavily my entire life. There's been some periods of my life where I got like really, really into it, where like my like girlfriends would have to leave me or whatever, you know.
Right,
And
right,
then and then there's other periods of my life where I got really into building something that I was interested in, and they fell by the wayside a little bit.
sure.
Um, but I have like right now the game that I play the most is Player Unknown Battleground, so PUBG. I have like 3,000 hours in that game, and I'm not even good at it. Like I still can't get a kill. Um, but I love video games nowadays. So I've loved video games my whole life. I played a lot of consoles. I didn't have an Atari, so
Okay,
I'm 28. So when I was growing up, we had a Super Nintendo was the first, and Sega Genesis. Those were the first. Wait, I want to ask you something. Do you remember this? This is so weird. Do you remember when Sega Genesis had some service that would like they'd come to your house and lay a wire down and they would like stream games to your Sega Genesis? It was called like Sega Channel.
so I don't remember it from experience, but I've actually just a couple months ago I fell down a YouTube rabbit hole of there's a channel on there called The Gaming Historian, and
Hmm.
he does these really great videos of like a whole bunch of old school stuff and things that I never knew existed. And I think he did one on this Sega Channel thing, and I was just like blown away. Like, wait, they did that? How did that
It's
work?
crazy. I don't know how it worked. It was fucking weird. Like I have this memory of my dad not wanting to pay for it, and I think my neighbors had it, and I think maybe the guy came out to our house and thought about installing it, but my dad said it was too much because it was like monthly. It was like $50 a month or something like that.
Oh,
And
geez.
and so I had looked up what it was because I don't. I remember playing it at my neighbor's house, and I think we must have had it at one point, but just not for very long, maybe a month or something. And
Yeah.
it's so weird to think the technology was so far ahead of its time that they were trying to stream video games to people. And I don't know why that came up, but it was fucking blew me away when I kind of remembered that. I remember the guy like in my family closet laying wires to like stream Sega games to our house. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I played all those consoles. I definitely transitioned into more of a PC gamer in college. I got super into online poker and StarCraft 2, which kind of have like the weird shared mentality in some sense. Um, and now I've been playing a lot of PUBG, but my love for video games has definitely transferred now from I just used to just purely love them just to play them, and now they're a very social experience for me where I get to connect with all my friends from high school and elementary school and people who I grew up with. We get to play video games and talk about each other's lives. And something about men, I think you have to have like something in between you and the other guy to like stay in touch. You know what I mean? You can't just like call up your buddy and be like, "How you feeling, man? Like, how's your family?" I don't know why, but like we like can't do that. So you have to be like, "Let's virtually kill some shit," and then also talk about that. Um,
I know 100% about what you're talking about. I actually dated a woman, and she got really mad because I wasn't spending a lot of time, but I was spending some time playing Xbox One online with my brother and my cousin and a couple friends. And, she's always like, well, this is such a waste of fucking time. Like, you're playing some stupid video game. And I'm like, it's
mhm,
not just playing the video game. Because if I just wanted to play a video game, I could just play. I've got a ton of solo games,
mhm,
one player games that I could play. But this is the only time, like you said, this is the only time that I would talk to my brother on any sort of regular
mhm,
basis. If it's
mhm,
2, 3 nights a week, even if it's one night a week, we're going to catch up first. We're going to get into a party. We're going to catch up. What's
mhm,
been going on? What happened with this? And then as you're playing, that's how you relate to each other.
mhm.
For better or for worse. And if we didn't have that, like you said, we were never calling each other and just
Right.
catching up over the phone. And it's sad that men are like that in general. It
Yeah.
should change. And I'm nowhere near qualified enough to speak as to how this originally started. I'm sure it goes back
Right.
centuries, if not thousands of years. But I know that that's the environment that I grew up in. That's what I learned as a kid. Like the guys just don't emote to each other like just
Mhm,
face to face. Like you have to have, like you said, like an interface, almost something to kind
mhm.
of split it up. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it as much for that as I did the actual gaming itself.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, I think it's transitioned quite a bit for me to the point where it's the central draw. Like, I'll play games with my friends when I don't even really feel like playing a game, right? It's just
Right.
all my friends are on Discord and I just get to talk to them and you get to collaborate on projects. I think men kind of like that. It's kind of like you all have a mission or something. So it's like
Sure, sure.
you're like, oh, we got to get to the circle or whatever, and you have to like collaborate and talk to each other. But then in between that, you get to find out, your friend moved or he's got a new job or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I play with my brother too, so I definitely it's important to have things that connect you. So I have one brother who like we connect over wrestling a lot, and we'll watch wrestling events together. We'll go to wrestling events, and then I have another brother who I connect a lot with via video gaming, and so I actually built him a gaming computer. I had
Oh
a
wow.
I had a problem with like something on my computer. It kept shutting off randomly, and so I was trying to figure out which piece it was. I build all my own computers, and I enjoy that. It's a weird thing, but I started like replacing all the pieces, and then I eventually got to the point where I was like trading for pieces, and I was picking up scrap pieces that I just thought were valuable. And my brother and I got into this game, Player Unknown Battlegrounds, like really intensely, and we were switching off on my gaming computer, and then I realized like I think I have enough pieces. I'm not sure, but to build a second computer, like I think I do.
Yeah.
And we kind of thought it was funny. We're like, do you like do you have a computer in the garage, but like scattered through a bunch of pieces? And it turned out I did. I had all the pieces for a computer, except for the case. So we got a cardboard box, and I had seen people do this on the internet. And I've always thought it was interesting, and like we like cut holes in it for the cables. And so he's
Yeah.
got he's got like this cardboard box gaming computer that he plays on now, and it's set up in one room of our house, and mine's set up in the other room. I live with my brother, and fucking have some gaming sessions, bro.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah,
Um, so switching back to and I mean I could talk about video games all fucking night for sure.
yeah,
Um, Switching back to music and punk. You did mention the Ramones earlier,
yeah.
and I saw an ad. I was walking downtown Chicago the other day to work, and I saw like an advertisement for, because I thought it was like a movie or like a documentary or something. But I guess it's a play that's coming to Chicago. I
Hmm.
think in a couple weeks. It's called Four Chords and a Gun. It's
Weird.
about it's Phil Spector made the Ramones a legend and destroyed the band. And it's so I know nothing about the Ramones other than like
Um,
two songs by them, right? But
I
like so I don't know what this play is about. I don't know if there's anything like I don't know
I
if this is if title is tongue in cheek or
I think okay, so I think I know the story behind that title. I could be wrong. I think the story is the Ramones went to record with Phil Spector, and he was a legendary producer, so they were excited to be there, but he was like on drugs or whacked out of his mind, and he was really freaky about the tones. Like he was like, and he had them hit like a snare drum for hours trying to microphone, like trying to mic it up and
Yeah.
tone it properly. And I guess the story goes at one point he held them up at gunpoint and said, "You got to
Huh.
keep hitting that chord so that I could mic it properly." That's I
Wow.
think that's what I've heard. So if the play is called Four Chords and a Gun, I maybe it's about Phil Spector being a fucking nutcase and holding the Ramones at hostage to get the tones proper on the this album.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that sounds interesting. Like I said, I know nothing about the Ramones. You said I mean, was that like the first punk band that like your brother introduced you to, or that you remember hearing?
I'm not sure if it's a 100% the first one, but probably. And like I think my dad had like Ramones mania. My dad was a record collector, so I grew up with a gigantic wall of records in our house. He was really into jazz records.
Okay.
There's a lot of jazz records, but he had a little bit of everything. He's the type of guy who could say, "Hey, Dad, do you like country or whatever?" And he'll flip through his records and he'd pull out a little something for you and put it on. Um, and he exposed my brothers and I to a whole bunch of different type of music. I remember being a little kid and he would give us Weezer tapes. He gave me a little like toy vinyl record player when I was like a toddler. I remember it. It was like a toy, but it worked, and then he would
Right,
throw it.
right,
He
right.
would throw us 7 inches, and he had a jukebox and all that sort of. My dad's a cool like collector type of guy. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think he told me about the Ramones, and I immediately like fell in love with them and grew out my hair to get a Ramones cut. And I had my AIM screen name was the Ramones 121. Um, yeah, I got super into them. I think they're probably the first. Later on in my life, my older brother showed me hardcore, which was another big influence on my life. Bands like Minor Threat and Black Flag and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I was in the records. Well, I was in several record stores this weekend, but there was these couple of 7 inches where they're like a mystery record, like it doesn't tell you on the label like what it is.
Uh huh.
It's just two, but it's two artists, and they both play the same. They cover the same song. So I went into the record store and I was like, I was looking through things for maybe like 20 minutes, and nothing was like just jumping out at me as like I gotta have this today. So it's like, you know what? As long as I'm here and I don't know what I want to buy, I'll just buy something and I literally don't know what the fuck it is because it's a
Man, you
mystery
got
record.
you got the sickness, huh? You're just in the
Yeah,
record
I
store
do.
buying
I
random
do.
records.
I can't if I'm in there for 20 minutes and then I got a lot of weird insecure things going on, so like then I would like feel
uh,
bad if I like was in the store that long and left without fucking buying anything. Um
uh,
and it was a $5 record too. So I was like, fuck
uh,
it, it's $5. So I actually Julie videotaped because we put it on our Instagram page. She videotaped me opening it up, and it was actually um the Ramones. It's a
mm,
song called Sheena is a Punk Rocker,
yeah, yeah. It's a great song.
and it's a live version of that. And then the flip had, and I don't know how to pronounce it because it's got umlauts, but it's Husker Du.
Yeah, Husker Du. Yeah.
Yeah, Husker Du.
Um, yeah, let me give you a little secret, man. If you got one Ramones song, you got them all. So you just scored the whole collection there.
I was playing it, and like I said, I'm not a punk fan. So like I was playing it, and I was like, I'm probably not gonna like this because I know who the Ramones are, that they're a punk band, so I'm probably just not
Uh-huh.
gonna like it. But I put it on, just played 10, 15 seconds of it, and then I flipped it over to for the Husker Du cover of it, and it sounded the same to me. But like Julie was behind the camera, and she was just like rocking out. She was just like, "This is fucking great," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a song," but
It's
yeah,
the best Ramones song if you want to check one out would be Bonzo Goes to Pittsburgh. It's a great song. I'll send it to you after this podcast. There's a Hard Times headline you might relate to. Um, we've done a whole bunch about record store stuff, but record collector in poor condition scores VG plus plus girlfriend.
The conditions are very important. They're
Yeah.
vital.
Uh, 1 second, flip through. There was another one that we ran just recently. Uh, Record store dispatches weird guy to flip through same stack of records you are.
You know what? I was just talking with my buddy the other day about this, how I get irrationally angry if I'm in if I'm digging through a bin and somebody like comes within like 2 rows to either side of me, like I can't concentrate on what I'm looking at because I'm just like, why the
Hmm.
fuck do they have to be so close to me? Like go somewhere else. Check out the country section over there or something. Give me my space. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, for
irrational because
sure.
that's not fair, but I feel it every single time. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that article out.
Um, Record collection organized by what money should have financed instead. 7-inch vinyl collector, also a fan of sitting for 2 minutes, standing up again. Uh,
This sounds like some good content for sure. I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to check these out. Um, Julie did want me to get you to give some album reviews, so I don't know how much time you've had to pick some out or to get into it. I don't know if this is something that you regularly do. Do you guys have music reviews on your site?
no, not yet. We're opening up. We're expanding into a non-satirical platform as well called Hard Noise, but it's not out yet. But there's two records I've been listening to quite a bit that I can talk about briefly if you want.
Sure, sure, yeah.
First record, The Old Firm Casuals, Holger Dansk. I don't 100% know how to pronounce it. This is Lars Ferguson's Oi band. Um, Lars Ferguson is from the band Rancid. He plays guitar. Um,
Okay.
a very important punk band that influenced me a lot growing up. And Old Firm Casuals is his Oi project with a bunch of guys from the Bay Area who played in other bands that I really enjoyed. Um, I really, really like this record. I have it on repeat in my car. It's like I have a CD player in my car, and I feel like not that many people put out CDs anymore. At least not people don't hand them to me. And I was lucky the guys from Old Firm Casuals like just sent me this record, so I was able to just like plop it in my car.
Yeah.
I listen to it all the time. But if you're a fan of like um, any Oi like Foreskins, Last Resort, that sort of stuff, but also a little bit of like there's some like a little bit of metal influences on some of the songs. And then also if you're a fan of Rancid, I would recommend checking out the Old Firm Casuals, and the record is Hold Your Dansk. It's like a some Lars is Danish, and it's like some Danish word. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Um,
Can you
and
can you really quickly speak to what oi is? Because I'm seeing it here in your music, like it's a genre, I'm assuming, but I have no idea
sure,
what it is. Never heard of it
sure.
till now.
Oh, all right, yeah. So punk comes around in the early 70s or mid 70s. It's like a, you know, rebellious sort of music. And then Oi is like Jamaican reggae influences that got like immigrants from Jamaica moved up to England and started mixing with the working class kids there, and they started creating like skinhead reggae in Jamaica and then in England. Um, so that was like the beginning of skinhead culture. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people hear the word skinhead and they think it's like crazy neo Nazis. Well, that was
Sure.
later. That was like they co-opted the sort of look and aesthetic
Yeah.
and stuff. But it actually all stems from Jamaican skinhead reggae. Oi is like a street punk version, like so more working class, more aggressive. Well, maybe not more aggressive. Actually, some glam influences, a little bit more melody, but more aggressive in the type of people who are playing it, in my opinion. Right? You have working class kids from England. They start shaving their heads. They got boots. They're sharp dressers, um, and you get Oi, which is like it's no longer reggae, so it's a skinhead music, but it's not reggae. It's like a punk. So it's like skinhead punk music is probably the best
Okay.
way to describe it. But it's a little bit more melodic. When it's good, it's a little bit more melodic than punk, but still very aggressive. So it's a very unique sound. I really like Oil a lot. There's a like if you're looking into like just you're gonna like pop in a new Oi band, I would start with Coxbar. Um, they're
Okay.
a great English Oi band. Street punk band, and it's a great example of like tough but melodic with choruses that stick in your head. Coxbar is one of my favorite bands of all time. But so
Okay.
Rancid is a punk band, right? That's Lars plays guitar, um, and but he's a skinhead, so he's always been into all that stuff. Like his first tattoo ever was it said "Oi," right? It's like a skinhead. Always what skinheads yell. Now that you're having me explain Oi, it's like this incredibly stupid type of music. But anyways, uh, Lars is a skinhead, and so Rancid is his punk band, and then this is his Oi project. But yeah, so if you're a fan of punk, check it out.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you had another recommendation.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so next band is a pretty interesting band. Have you ever heard of Angel Dust?
No. Well,
Okay,
the drug or the band?
the drug. You want to hear a crazy Angel Dust story? Lars from Old Firm Casuals, he was on our podcast, and he told us some crazy stories about Angel Dust back in the day. Um, no, Angel Dust is a band that came from the hardcore scene, the new hardcore scene, not like 1980s, a current band. It has members of like Trapped Under Ice, which was a very tough hardcore band from, I believe, Baltimore. A lot of like street credibility, intimidating figures and such in the band.
Sure.
Some people you wouldn't want to mess with, which is a part of the allure of hardcore music for sure, whether or not it's stated or not. But Angel Dust is this project that they have where they wanted to purposely sound different and they wanted to be more melodic and they wanted you to be able to dance to it and they wanted to write like love songs. And it's really interesting their catalog. I think their first one comes out like 2016, maybe their first songs in 2015, 2016, something like that. But their records keep changing, and they just put out a new one called Pretty Buff. And it's just like this beautiful piece of music. And you have like these tough hardcore dudes like singing about love, and there's like a saxophone on it. And it just has this
Oh, wow.
really unique sound. And I really enjoy it. And it's got the drummer from Turnstile. Have you heard of Turnstile?
No.
So his name is Daniel Fang, and he's a friend of mine. We play video games together. He's a really great guy, and it's just Turnstile is like one of the biggest hardcore bands right now. So it's just a really interesting project that I just really admire, and I listen to Pretty Buff really frequently since it came out. Um, Probably my favorite track might be the first one, which is called No Fair. But then also the really catchy one is Bang My Drum. Um, it's really great. There's some great lyrics in there, like about touring life, and about like I think that one of the lyrics is like, you gotta like my dog and rock and roll. It's like they're very they have a very unique culture to them. I would say that they're culture creators. They have their own style, and they're not afraid to show off their style. They're not afraid
Yeah.
to stand out and be a little bit different, and I like that a lot. It's very admirable. So it's a band I really enjoy.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how long you were thinking this was gonna last. Because I just had like, I don't know. I love music. So I kind of like have a lot of questions about punk. So
Sure.
I don't
You
want
can
to take up too much of your time, but I've got a couple questions because I know
th-
like zip about it.
throw some at me.
Uh,
I'll try my best to answer them.
so, okay, so punk started in you said the early 70s.
I think okay. So there's proto. Now you're really good at see. We'll see how much I know. There's proto punk, right? There's like the MC5. I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure when they started, but I think that they're going to be punk officially starts being a coined phrase around 75, 76,
Okay.
1976, something like that. Um, yeah, so that's around the birth of punk, and there's some proto punk that comes around, but I think people consider the birth of punk like the birth. If you're like looking at it, I think most people agree it's Sex Pistols and the Ramones. I think. Yeah.
Okay. And Sex Pistols obviously British, yeah?
Yeah, and that's where the old argument comes about, is punk a New York thing or a British thing? There's some people who discuss that. I haven't really paid too much attention to which side is correct, but I definitely think that. But I'm remembering a story now in one of their books. There's a story. I think the Sex Pistols saw the Ramones, or the Ramones saw the Sex Pistols. The
Okay.
one of them saw the other one and was like influenced by it. I forget. Maybe it
Huh.
was Sex. Okay, Sex Pistols were formed in London in 1975. Let's see when the Ramones were formed.
Is there a split? Like if you like one, you have to kind of dislike
The,
the other, or it doesn't matter?
Ramones were formed in Queens in 1974. No, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think it's a little bit of like a UK versus US thing, where like I'm from the US, so I'm probably thinking Ramones invented punk. It sounds like I think I'm remembering my story now. I read somewhere that well, first of all, it says the Ramones were formed a year earlier, but I think I had read that like some of the Sex Pistols had saw the Ramones and had been like, "That's what we want to play." Um,
Nice.
I'm not 100% sure. There was actually a big argument about this recently. Still, they had Epics, some TV channel. I think it's related to like it's like some premium TV channel. Came out with a new documentary series called Punk, which I'm sure explains this stuff much better than I do. And uh, Tommy Ramone and Johnny Rotten, Tommy Ramone being from the Ramones and Johnny Rotten being from the Sex Pistols, were actually arguing still on stage about it. So who knows?
I love.
I'll let those guys decide.
Yeah. So so are there different eras of punk? Like if it starts in the 70s, does it get like does it break out into different like subgenres like in the 80s like all
Oh
sorts of
yeah.
music genres just like fracture, right?
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It goes crazy. So, there's definitely like the original shit, and then there's a million different subgenres. And the one that I was most interested in is in the 1980s. So let's say 5 to 6, maybe 7 years after punk is kind of coined and uh, written about. You have American hardcore pop off, and that's like a more stripped down, aggressive form of punk with its own unique styles and ideas, and those are the bands that really started to grip me. That's like Minor Threat, and that's where like
okay.
straight edge comes about. Um, the Teen Idols, and then you have of course like Black Flag, and that's when you get like the hardcore bands. And some of those hardcore bands were punk bands who then started playing more hardcore, or like they were just already a band that then just kind of became a part of that scene.
Yeah.
One of the coolest hardcore bands, if you're interested in subgenres of punk, is Bad Brains. Have you heard of Bad Brains?
I have heard. I've definitely heard of Bad Brains. I've heard of Minor Threat, Black Flag.
Yeah,
I've just never checked them out, you know.
dude. I'll send you a link to like some Bad Brains live footage. They were just, at least from the people who I've talked to who've seen them live, back in the day, it's just like incredibly energetic performances. And really, dude, they were so fast, but they were also rhythmic, which a lot of punk bands didn't quite have. They had like more of a tuka 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 tuka, right? They're just like a bass snare,
Yeah,
bass snare, bass snare. And Bad Brains had so much speed, but then also rhythm. And they infused it with reggae, so they would be playing hardcore, and then all of a sudden they'd be playing reggae for 2 songs, and then, like the crowd would get a chance to cool down. They'd have like
sure.
this big build up, and then crack, and it pops off, and you're back into hardcore. One of the best build ups, I think, in punk and hardcore ever is Bad Brains. Big Takeover is the song. It's got an incredible build up. You have to dance when it all comes in.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, there's a whole bunch of different subgenres. There's crust punk, there's D beat, there's crossover, thrash, right? So you have like the Bay Area, you have like DRI and stuff, where it's like they start playing like almost speed metal sort of stuff, like crossover, thrash, like punk and metal mixed together. Um, then you have like yeah, this is a lot of different forms of punk. It kind of spread. It also depends on where you're at. I grew up in the Bay Area, so hardcore wasn't as big. You have more of an influence from like ska punk, right? So you have like Operation
okay.
Ivy, and that had a really big influence around here. So there was like a lot of that still, like Gilman Street, a lot of the bands that played there. There were hardcore bands, no doubt. I mean, there's fucking Dead Kennedys are from the Bay Area, but a lot more political and a lot more ska influenced, I would say. Um,
Yeah,
like Rancid is like a band that I was really big on growing up, and they're from the Bay Area, and they have like that reggae influence, the ska influence that goes throughout all of their records. So, but yeah, East Coast, I think you have more, a little bit less of like the ska, reggae, political,
sure.
hippie stuff, and you have more of like the thug street culture stuff, which I also really enjoy.
Yeah.
Little bit of a broad generalization, but if you look at like New York hardcore versus what was happening on the West Coast, I think that it's a little bit fair to say.
So Stooges, were they a punk band?
Yeah, that's a I was the music editor at SF Weekly, um, and my editor was an old editor for Rolling Stone, and he had all these um, incredible old stories about bands like that. I think the Stooges, if you talk to guys like that, I think that they're a rock band, and then I think that they have uh, they're like proto punk and then punk. Like they're kind of punk
Okay.
before punk was a thing.
Okay.
Um, so, I mean, Iggy Pop is such a fucking big influence on the punk scene. It's like I think you know, yeah, you call him. I think most people call him proto punk, and then once punk becomes a thing, they become punk. But they're also like they're also just a rock band too. Because
Yeah.
the Stooges are like your dad will listen to the Stooges, right? Um, but yeah, we actually go to this music festival called Punk Rock Bowling, and Iggy Pop and the Stooges they played there. I got to see them live. It's incredible. It's a great band. But yeah, the Iggy Pop and the Stooges, and then there's like MC5, and there's a couple other bands that are like those rock bands that are also proto punk bands that like everyone was kind of influenced by. Like the first guys to kind of have like that "fuck you" attitude, I'll play whatever I want or whatever, like kick over
Yeah.
something, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the kick out the jams, motherfucker. That sort of whole stripped down attitude of like I think that's the attitude that kind of births punk rock.
Um, I'm just trying to, and I'm sorry if this is, I just want to know. I need to place these bands in the proper context in my head, even though I like have never really listened to any of their stuff. Um, like, are the Specials a punk band? With it,
Yeah,
I don't know.
the specials are playing. The specials are playing punk rock bowling, so I'm actually going to go see them um, on May 22nd in Las Vegas. Um, they're a punk band, but they're like I think they're considered like they're punk rock, but that's like one of those ska reggae things, like two tone,
Okay.
right? So I think that's like ska revival almost. I'm honestly I'm a little fuzzy on my ska history because I know there's different waves of ska, but like I wasn't such a big fan of it that I'm not 100% sure which wave they are. I think they're considered a ska revival band, so I think that they're the
Okay.
second wave of ska. Um, I was actually really big into Streetlight Manifesto, which I think is considered a third wave of ska band. But that's an amazing band if you haven't heard them. I really, really like them. But yeah, the Special Star punk band for sure. They're kind of like what I was saying. Like there's a lot of those punk bands with this ska reggae influence.
Yeah. Um, and I had heard of that name before, the Specials, but I bought years ago. I don't know. Well, you probably do. You know who the Prodigy are?
Mm,
The Firestarter, Smack My Bitch Up, the electronic group, the Prodigy.
no, 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 no.
Oh man,
Prodigy.
see, this is what's crazy to me about music because these guys are one of the biggest electronic acts ever, and they're my top three groups ever. But like,
Really?
if you're not fucking with a certain type of music, then like you could just miss out on like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
thing with. So that's what it always tickles me when I hear that because it's like I can relate to it because I don't know the names of a billion bands that are like huge or
Right. We're
some
all
groups that people.
siloed, right? You know what I mean? Like we all have like our own little area that we hang out in and that we learn about, and then it's kind of hard to break. There's so much stuff out there. It's kind of hard. That's one of the things is when I got that job as the music editor at SF Weekly, I immediately felt overwhelmed because I grew up my whole
Sure.
life listening to punk, and then I would have people asking me to edit pieces about electronica and stuff, and I was like, I gotta learn about this shit quick, man. Like I gotta,
Yeah.
and I had to build a team around myself of people who I could trust, and I had to go and review the symphony and shit, and I had to like, all right, well, I got to figure out what makes a good symphony.
Right. Right.
So yeah, for sure. I don't think I've heard of them. It's funny. I'm sure that's like a very big band that inspired so many people, but nope, not me.
Yeah, yeah. So the guy the music producer who's the genius behind all their songs, he had started in the UK as a hip hop DJ back in the late '80s, I think. Um, but he released like a DJ mix CD. It says 2005 here, and so it's just
Mm.
like it's a smorgasbord of shit. Like it's got Queens of the Stone Age on there, Public Enemy, Dolly. He's
Hmm.
got Jolene by Dolly Parton in there, um, Lee Scratch Perry, Meat Beat Manifesto. But he threw a special song on there, and I was playing it at a party once, and my buddy Eric was like, "Dude, I didn't know you listened to the specials," and I was like, "Dude, I don't listen to the specials, but this song is on here and I like it. It's a
Yeah.
message to Rudy." So
Oh,
you know,
that's a great song. I love the specials.
yeah.
I'm super excited to see him. I've never seen him live. Um,
Oh, well, that'll be. When are you seeing him?
May 22nd, there's a festival called Punk Rock Bowling, which is like a 3-day festival at in like near the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas, and there's like pool parties and like there's a bowling tournament and all these late night club shows. So like all these punks show up in Vegas and bands play next to the pool and you jump in the pool and there's a huge festival grounds and Hard Times is gonna have a tent there, and we're also doing like a comedy night with Jonah Ray from Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and it's going to be a lot of fun. A big chunk of our company goes out to Vegas, and it's a kind of excuse just to hang out and see
Yeah.
people. And yeah,
No, it sounds like a really good time to have in Vegas. Sure.
yeah,
Um. Okay. Well, listen, I am going to wrap this up, and not because I'm for any lack of interest. I don't. We're kind of like flying by the seat of our pants on this whole thing.
sure.
Um, just kind of figuring it out as we go. But do you have any last like you want to throw in any plugs for Hard Times or?
Check out the Hard Times podcast. I interview a whole bunch of people who from the punk scene who changed my life with their music. Hey, you ever heard of the Gaslight Anthem?
No.
Ah, it's a good one. You gotta check that one out. Um, I'm trying to find someone who you might know. You ever heard of Frank Turner?
No.
So your main interest is going to be electronica, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah, okay,
electronic for sure.
okay. I'm gonna try to not be a poser here and come up with something. Uh, what is the name of the? I edited this really interesting article once. Do you know? Oh, you probably don't know him, my friend. There's this band, electronica band, who actually has like a program write all their music. Hey, do you know Cold Cave?
No.
They're a cold wave electronica band, but they're spawned from the punk scene. That's like the only one I'm gonna know.
So what is cold wave? Because I've heard like a couple of genres of electronic the last couple of years that are like something wave, and I was like, I don't know what this shit is. I have no idea what it is.
Cold wave is whatever the fuck Wes from American Nightmare made. That's his hardcore band. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like you know how every genre has like the one guy who goes and creates something like in a different genre and everyone hears about it. That's like our guy is
Okay.
Cold Cave. Like so he played in a band called American Nightmare, like a Boston hardcore band that was really popular. And then he ended up creating like his own solo stuff with like synths, and it's called Cold Wave. This is like danceable 80s synth poppy sort of stuff, you know? Like
Okay. Okay.
it's Cold Wave. I don't know, man.
Well, I'm gonna go to I go to this bar here in Chicago, where the two like the bartender and the general manager there, they're huge music like aficionados. Like
Hmm.
I think I know like a good deal about music, but like I started going there like a year ago, and just like the first conversation, just like listening to these two guys talk about music, I'm just like I don't know shit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so it's really nice to just go and just like listen to them talk because they just know so many things, and I like absorbing it. But I'm gonna go over there tonight, and I'm gonna fucking drop some names and try to
You,
act like I know a little thing or two about punk. So I'm gonna see how quickly they sniff me out.
you know,
I'm trying to make it 5 minutes out, but
good luck, man. I'm rooting for you. You know who did that for me was the clubs editor at SF Weekly. His name was John, and he just knew everything. He's just a guy
yeah.
who's just like he knew every show that had happened in the Bay Area since the last 20 years or whatever, and all the different genres. And so I would just always kind of lean on and be like, "Hey, how should I describe this band?" You know, like just some band I hadn't heard of. Those are always good people to keep in your circle.
For sure. Well, listen, Matt. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was great meeting
I
you,
had
man.
no idea. It was nice meeting you. I had no idea how this was gonna go, but I'm actually pretty fucking stoked about it right now.
I think we nailed it.
Yeah, and thank you for the I'm definitely gonna check out uh your website more in depth now because it from what you described and from what I'm looking at, it looks like there's a lot of cool shit on there that I'm gonna enjoy. So,
Yeah, I hope you do.
all right, well, maybe we'll have you back. I mean, I feel like we only scratched the surface on some things that I'd like to talk more about. So, and maybe we'll get Julie in on the next one too. So,
Anytime, man. I'm happy to come on. So thanks for hanging out, and it was nice meeting you.
nice meeting you too, buddy. You have a good night, and I'll talk to the other listeners next time I host this.
Peace. Bye, listeners.
See ya. Bye.